Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. Welcome to episode 98 of the Old Mage MTG podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Old Mage Steve. I'm here with my co-host, Old Mage Alex. Say hello to the folks out there, Alex.
Yo.
Yo. You brought the yo last week. You brought the yo this week.
I'm a yoer.
Today, we have some Weatherlight discussion for you. We're going to discuss some basics of the set, and we're going to discuss an old article I found titled The Weatherlight Cards That Changed the World. It's written by Mike Flores. We're also going to discuss some recent buys. This is something we used to do on the podcast more often when we first started. We haven't done it in a very long time. But I have some things. We finally have some stuff we want to talk about. I've been bulking. Yes, I have gotten fatter over the past few months, but that is not what I'm talking about. I finally found some LGSs near my house that will sell me cards for a nickel or less from their bulk bins. And I've purchased way too many cards over the past 2 weeks. And Alex, you've been Bloomburrowing. So you've been buying some new Magic. Well, I've been digging through grody old boxes of 20 to 30-year-old cards. I will say that after I sit down in these places and I dig through their boxes for like an hour or something, my hands feel really gross. I've noticed that. I need to start bringing hand sanitizer if I'm going to.
We could do a segment where we swab card boxes like in stores and then analyze what's on the swabs.
That's right up my alley. Those are two of my interests, microbiology and Magic the Gathering. And Alex, that's a very good idea. I've never seen that kind of content online before. I am slightly afraid of what I might find.
Yeah.
But anyways, if you enjoy the show, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube or on whatever podcast app you use. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever damn podcast app you use. I bet we're on it. And also, I have to say, this is August. We are in the Old Mage birthday month. 2 old mages are about to get 1 year older this month. So if you'd like to give the old mages maybe a little birthday gift, you can support us while building your Magic collection at the same time. We have a TCG Player affiliate link. So we'll have the affiliate link in the description below. You click on that affiliate link, you put the cards in your cart, you check out. A few days later, they show up at your house. You get exactly what you wanted, and we get a tiny little percentage. It works out for all of us. With that being said, let's get right into the first segment of the show, Alex. Today, the first segment is all about Weatherlight. And I just wanted to start by talking about some of the basics of the set. For people who don't remember Weatherlight, Weatherlight is the 11th Magic expansion. It was released June 1997. It is the third set of the Mirage block. It is the second small expansion of that same block. Came right after Weatherlight. So it was Mirage. Sorry, it came right after Visions. So it was Mirage, Visions, Weatherlight. Weatherlight contains 167 black bordered cards. It has 50 rares, 55 uncommons, 55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 tacos, 55 pies, 55 cokes, and 62 uncommons. These cards could be opened from booster packs containing 15 cards. You get your 1 rare, you get 3 uncommons, you get 11 commons. This brings me back to a much simpler time in Magic the Gathering, Alex. Bloomburrow just came out, and I was looking to see, because Bloomburrow is very, very exciting. It's bringing a lot of people who aren't necessarily usually interested in like modern Magic to modern Magic. I'm seeing a lot of interest from older people on my timeline saying, this is the first new product I've bought in a long time. I know you bought some new product. I was looking to see what was offered, and it's not like it was back in the day where your options were to buy a starter deck, or you could buy a booster pack. If you wanted to go crazy, you'd buy a whole box of booster packs, but that was it. You had your booster pack. You didn't have to choose between like collector boosters and play boosters and draft boosters. And it seems like every new set since we started playing again, there's like some new type of booster.
They kind of keep tweaking it. There's
They do
actually
keep
less
tweaking.
now for this set because they took set and draft and combined them into play. So now there's just play and collectors.
They're just okay. So
Yeah.
you got
But
play.
then they added the new, like, it's like 3 cards or whatever, like little mini at the side of the cash register impulse buy pack, I forget what they call it, tester pack or sample pack or something.
Okay, so I didn't even know that. So there's another thing. And
So
on
yeah,
top of
they're
that, there's
they're they're mixing around all the time.
yeah, on top of that, there's pre-con decks you could buy.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I can't get oriented to the modern Magic products because, like you said, it seems like every modern set we've been around for over the last like year and a half, 2 years, they're tweaking all the time.
Yeah, and they also tweak, like the treatments in the sets and like,
Yeah,
what the slots contain. So you kind of just need to, if there's a set you're interested in, you kind of just need to like look up the information about it for each set, I
yeah,
guess. Which is fine. I mean, it doesn't really bother me if I'm
it's
excited
fine.
about the set.
But back when Weatherlight was out, you didn't need to do any research about which
No.
pack you were going to buy. You showed up at the LGS. You said, "Do you have any Weatherlight?" And they pointed at the one box of booster packs that they had, and that was it. This was the first set to tell. I'm seeing this. I saw this on MTG Wiki. It was the first set to explicitly tell an ordered narrative focused on developed archetypal characters. The new approach to designing and marketing Magic proved to be a huge success both popularly and commercially. Weatherlight also set the stage for the books of the Wrath Cycle storyline. So I also sort of remember this from back in this time, that there was a much more well-defined storyline than we were used to with like the sets that we first started out with, like Arabian Nights and in Legends. But like despite that, I wasn't paying any attention to the characters or the story really. I was just still thinking about the mechanics and the playability. But I know that this set introduced a bunch of characters to the Magic world that like people have become very connected to because they started releasing books and stuff around this time too.
Mhm.
I can imagine. I never read those books, but I can imagine people being connected to these characters the way like I got connected to some of the characters in the Dragonlance novels when you first handed me the Dragonlance novels. And I started reading some of those, and next thing I know, I got tears running down my face in study hall in high school because the dwarf just died. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
MTG
Uh,
Wiki tells me that this set was designed independently of Mirage Envisions, but it was decided to incorporate some elements of those previous two sets. And that's exactly how I felt at the time. Like I know it was part of the block, but it didn't seem as connected to the other two sets, to me, at least.
oh
That's what I
yeah.
remember.
Yeah, it was a bit of an outlier flavor wise from the other two.
I was even trying to think of like what tied them together, and really the things that stick out in my head are some of the cards had phasing and flanking. So there was some like mechanical similarities between Weatherlight and the other two, but like flavor wise, it always seemed kind of separate to me. There were no new mechanics introduced during Weatherlight, but it did have a graveyard focus. I also didn't remember this. Like if you look at the MTG wiki under themes and mechanics, the one thing mentioned is graveyard matters. And when I read about Weatherlight nowadays, it's often pointed out that it was really the first Graveyard Matters set in Magic the Gathering, although I'm not sure most people think of Weatherlight when they think of sets that are heavy on graveyard mechanics. I didn't really. But there are quite a few cards that incorporate the graveyard into their effects. So there's cards like Bone Dancer, which we've talked about in previous episodes. There's Bosium Strip. There's Necrotog, which is the tog that eats creatures from your graveyard. Phyrexian Furnace, return things from your graveyard. Or sorry, remove cards from the graveyard. Spinning Darkness. This was a black spell that you could cast either for its casting cost or by removing a certain number of cards from your graveyard. I think it was 3. There's Gaia's Blessing. We've mentioned that on the show many times. Urgborg Justice, many more. They just, when I was going through the list of cards, it is true that, I mean, there really are a lot of graveyard interactions in this set. It just, totally slipped my mind. Like when I think about Weatherlight, I don't think about Graveyard.
Yeah, I don't
Barrow
remember
Ghoul.
like at the time being like, oh, this is a big, like graveyard set or something. I
No,
think, those cards were just blended into everything else going on in the set, to me at least.
this is one that I see mentioned often too. Barrow Ghoul. One colorless, one black, 4/4 zombie. During your upkeep, remove the top creature card in your graveyard from the game, or borrow Ghoul. Barrow Ghoul. Berry Ghoul. I can't say that. Borrow
Barry,
Ghoul.
Barrow, Ghoul.
Barrow. Barrow Ghoul. When I was thinking about what else to say about Weatherlight, I started to think about the cards that I most remembered from when we opened packs. I didn't really think about Graveyard. I didn't think about Barrow Ghoul. And with the exception of Abeyance, which is a very popular and powerful card from Weatherlight, which a lot of people probably remember, the cards I most remembered, they weren't really powerful cards. Like I think Weatherlight, I thought of Stompy cards, classic Stompy cards like Rogue Elephant, Harvest Worm. I love that combo. Play Rogue Elephant for 1 green, sacrifice a forest. Then play your Harvest Worm for 1 colorless, 1 green. Bring that forest back from the graveyard. They weren't game changing. These were just fun creatures to play in a green machine and a green Stompy deck. I think of lands like Gemstone Mine, which I loved for the gameplay and for flavor reasons. I liked that you had this mine that you could only tap 3 times before you used up all the resources in the mine. Then you had to put the land into your graveyard. It
I
was a
still
nice
love it.
little
Great card.
it was a nice little downside too that they built into this land that you could tap for anything, but it didn't stick around forever. So a great card with a reasonable downside and a flavorful downside. I thought a Lotus Veil, which at the time it was printed, it drew me in simply because it had the word Lotus in it. That was it. I remember people were excited about it. I think that's probably why most people were excited about Lotus Veil at the time. It had been a long time since we had seen the word Lotus printed on a piece of cardboard. I never played with it. It's kind of a pain in the ass to play with. I think people play with it more nowadays because you have some cards that you can put in your deck that still allow you to benefit from those lands that you have to bury when you play Lotus Veil. But back in the day, you were just asking for trouble if you played Lotus Veil. When Lotus Veil comes into play, sacrifice 2 untapped lands or bury Lotus Veil. And you could tap it to add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool.
Yeah, I like it.
Had quite a
I picked one up a while back, a year ago or so. I think it's a pretty cool card, and I love the art on it. Just, it's a little bit risky. You have to sack lands to bring it out, and then they can destroy it for, a lot of effect. And it would obviously be nice if they didn't have to be untapped lands, you know. But it's still
yeah.
a pretty cool card.
It'd be much better.
Yeah.
It'd be much better and it'd probably be a lot more expensive than $29.50.
Yeah.
And then I think of Bosium Strip, which isn't really good, but I've always wanted to use it to replay my lightning bolts. I've talked about this before on the show. But that's a terrible idea because what makes lightning bolt so great is that you can do 3 damage to any target just for 1 red mana. So if I have a Bosium Strip out, yes, I can replay that lightning bolt, but I have to feed 3 colorless into my Bosium Strip and then tap it and then play my lightning bolt for another red. So that's way worse. 4 mana for 3 damage is not as good as 1 mana for 3 damage.
No.
But I always
Probably
wanted to do
like
it.
scales better with like Swords to Plowshares, you know what I mean? Something like that. Where for the 4 mana you might still like not mind spending the 4 to get rid of a big creature.
Yeah, instant interrupter sorcery in your graveyard. Until end of turn, if at any time the top card of your graveyard is an instant interrupter sorcery, you may play that card as though it were in your hand. If you do so, remove it from the game. What instants and sorceries are out there that are also free spells? So maybe that way I won't even have to pay even more mana than its original casting cost. I'll have to think about that for a little bit. Even if I play with free spells, it's still not a good card. I want it to be a good card. I think it's a beautiful looking card. Not that great. Any that come to mind for you, Alex? You mentioned one the other day. Was it
Um,
Meraxis?
oh yeah, Meraxis of Keld, just
Right.
because I remembered the artwork. So, I pulled this out of a pack and I remember how like ridiculous he is with the insane muscles. Uh, and
He was a beefcake, Alex. That got you
yeah,
excited.
Beefcake, yeah. It was obviously a very noticeable card in the set when you started like cracking packs open. Uh, he has like the potential to be a really large star creature. 6 mana, not I don't know. I'd never really play with it or anything, but
The kind of card that gets you excited when you're a kid.
yeah.
Not because he's beefy and wearing leather. It's because, I mean, when we were young, when we saw a legendary creature, one, that was exciting. And then also anything to get really huge, anything to get potentially really powerful. Meraxis of Keld is 4 colors, 2 red, has power and toughness, each equal to the total number of untapped artifacts, creatures, and lands you control. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And this is one of the recurring characters in the Weatherlight and maybe the sets after. I don't know if he's in it a lot, but I know of at least one other card that he's on where he's dead. Dead of Loyalty is a white card from Weatherlight also, and it has Miraculous of Killed dead in the background. Um, so I don't know if he appears on too many other cards besides those two, but he's there.
I don't remember Debt of Loyalty at all. Oh, okay. Okay. I remember this. I remember this image. And I wouldn't have even known who that was. Dead in the background.
At least I think it's him. For some reason, I think that's him. I
Well,
don't
no,
know
it
if I've
does. It
read that
looks this
somewhere,
thing on his
but
head. That
yeah,
thing on his head.
yeah, it's got to be him, right? Yeah.
1 colorless, 2 white, instant, regenerate target creature, gain control of that creature. That's oh, I was gonna say it's not bad, but you do have to kill the creature first.
I wonder if you can you just. Hmm, I'm gonna look up see if there's any errata on that. But anyways, we can move on to another card.
This card is more expensive than I thought it would be. It's $9 now. It was up to as much as $40 in 2021. It is reserve list. Okay. Okay. That's a unique effect for white. There's not many spells in white that allow you to steal a creature. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
I'm looking at a ruling. It says casting Debt of Loyalty puts a regeneration shield on a creature. If later in the turn that creature would be destroyed, instead it regenerates and you gain control of it.
So you cast it first and then you kill the creature.
Yeah, I guess.
That would make sense, actually. Because it has to be regenerated first and then you gain control of it. In order for it to be regenerated, it has to be killed. So cast
Yeah,
Debt of Loyalty, cast some sort of spell targeting the creature, kill the creature, gain control of the creature. Not bad. I mean, that's unique. Miraxis of Keld, Debt of Loyalty. Anything else, Alex? Anything else from Weatherlight?
well, I know you had a couple to talk about, so you don't want to mention those, right? But dense foliage, I remember at the time
Dense
making
foliage.
a bit of a impression, pulling my attention.
Dense foliage. Does this give some pluses? Oh no, okay, I remember what it was because you mentioned it to me recently. Uh Gives everything shroud?
Yeah,
Yes, all creatures. 2 colorless, 1 green enchantment. Creatures cannot be the target of spells. So all your creatures, but all everybody's creatures.
and it's just spells, it's not effects.
Oh yes.
So
Yes. So not quite shroud.
yeah,
That could potentially cause chaos in Commander. You could build some sort of Commander deck that doesn't have any spells targeting creatures,
oh
but
okay.
has all sorts of creatures with activated abilities that target creatures.
Mhm.
Throw dense foliage in the mix. Have at it. And it's got a squeak quote. Big plants, not only good for hiding, but full of tasty bugs too, says Squee, Goblin Cabin Hand. Okay, Squee. But those are casual. I mean, like from Weatherlight, it was abeyance and a bunch of casual cards that stuck in my head.
Hmm.
But when I was doing research, trying to remind myself all the cards that were in Weatherlight, what the themes of the set were, I came across an article that was written by Mike Flores about some of the most impactful cards from the set. So now you and I, back in 97, we were just playing in people's basements, playing on people's kitchen tables, casual Magic the Gathering games. We weren't tournament players, we weren't competitive players. So we remember one set of cards from the type of things we were doing with Magic at the time. Somebody like Mike Flores, who was very active at the highest competitive levels. He probably has a very different memory of Weatherlight and what Magic was like around the time Weatherlight was released. And he wrote this article covering some of the cards that had the biggest effect on the competitive scene back when it was first released, when the set was first released. I thought this article would be a great guide for reminiscing about some of these powerful cards and discussing some of these powerful cards. So I'm going to pull this article up. It can be found right now on the Wayback Machine. And I'm going to put the link, if you want to read it, I'll put the link in the description below. It's the Weatherlight Cards That Changed the World. It was written on December 6th, 2007 by Mike Flores. And it starts off saying, Weatherlight was a set chock full of remarkable cards that over the years generated comparatively few remarks. And that really rung true to me when I read that, because when I think back to this time, I don't really think much about Weatherlight. I have to sit down and like focus to think about what the big cards were from Weatherlight. It's not like I have a very I have more vivid memories from Mirage and Visions. I can
Yeah,
think
I'd say
off
so.
the top of my head of more powerful cards, more popular cards from Mirage and Visions than I can from Weatherlight. Some of that has to do with the size of the set. I mean, Mirage was obviously much larger, but I did feel like Weatherlight, it didn't get nearly as much shine. And then he goes on to say, Weatherlight's standard was very strange, a window to today's multiple block structured standard formats. Right before U.S. Nationals in 1997, Ice Age was reinstated, bringing Swords to Plowshares back with it, which served to overshadow the new set in the short term. Weatherlight was sandwiched between Impulse or Vampiric Tutor from Visions and the rapid-fire team of Jackal Pup, Mog Fanatic, Wasteland, and Curse Scroll and Tempest. World-shattering as it was in cases, the set was, at the time, somehow overshadowed. And then that brings us to the first card mentioned by Mike Flores. He says, and yet, abeyance. So this is the first card that comes to mind for me when I think of Weatherlight. Actually, I remember being excited about this card when it first came out. I remember just throwing it into decks. I still sit down often when I'm building pre-modern decks with white in them, and I think, should I put abeyance in? I never end up putting abeyance in, but I don't know. Is abeyance underplayed in pre-modern, Alex?
I don't know.
Alex doesn't
Yes.
know. I don't
Yes. I
know
mean, I
either.
like it, but maybe there's a reason that people don't play it as much, and that's just because I don't know what's good.
I'm also not sure. I want to
I
say
might put
yes.
it in that green-white insecty deck I was working on. Has some combat tricks and stuff in it. Might be good.
I'd say whatever deck you put it in, it will be decent.
Yeah,
It won't be
yeah, yeah.
bad in any deck. Yeah. Abeyance, if you don't know, is one colorless, one white, instant. Until end of turn, target player cannot play instants, interrupts, sorceries, or abilities requiring an activation cost. Draw a card. It is a reserve list card from Weatherlight. Has a rating of 4.466 on Gather. The people loved it back then. And it has a current market price of $13.32. I often hear abeyance referred to as a mini time walk. It could be used as a mini time walk. You prevent your opponent from doing many things, and you get to draw a card. They don't lose their turn entirely, but there are many things that they can't do and you get to draw a card from it.
Puts you most of a turn ahead.
I liked its use as a spell to cast before another spell you wanted to protect.
Yeah,
So
it's
to
like
draw counters to protect
it's
from
counter
counters,
counter. Yeah.
a counter, or to bust up a combo your opponent is attempting to pull off. That's how I used this card in the past. This is how I remember it being used. However, Alex, he mentioned something in this article. You could tell me if you ever remember this. It was once even more of a time walk than I realized. From the article, he says, foremost among Weatherlight cards was a little instant that absolutely flabbergasted everyone. When Abeyance was first printed, it was very nearly a true time walk. This was during a time in Magic history when everything was a time walk, including Mana War, bounce your creature, time walk, memory lapse, counterspell, put it back on top of your deck so you have to draw it again next turn, time walk, and even Arcane Denial next to Winter Orb. Everybody was calling everything a time walk. Any tempo
Does it
card,
mean
time
all
walk.
three of those, like any of those three cards next to Winter Orb, or Man War and Memory Lapse each by themselves, and Arcane Denial with Winter Orb?
I think he just meant Arcane Denial next to Winter Orb. Because Arcane Denial, you're giving your opponent, cards. They're drawing more cards from it. But I think what he's saying there is, many decks that would run Arcane Denial, they would do things to essentially lock down their opponent. So even though they're drawing the cards, they don't have the resources to cast the spells.
Yeah.
Winter Orb would be one of those prison cards that you would run in a deck where you don't care if they draw the extra cards because they're not going to be able to cast them anyways. That's the idea there. I think Mana War and Memory Lapse, those are just both like classic tempo cards, and people like to talk about a lot of different tempo cards as being like mini time walks because you're setting your opponent back in some way. None of them are
Yeah.
quite
Okay.
good as a actual time walk, but because at initial tournaments, abilities require an activation cost. So this is back to Abeyance. At initial tournaments, abilities require an activation cost, included tapping lands for mana! Exclamation point. Abeyance! Exclamation point. Pow! Exclamation point. No turn for you! Exclamation point, says Mike Flores. So initially, this is obviously what was happening on the tournament scene, at least in the very early days. They did change it early on. So like this might have happened so fast that we never even realized that this is how Abeyance was once played. But like initially with Abeyance, you couldn't even tap a land to play a creature. So this is like the one thing that you could do when somebody Abeyanced you. Okay, I can't play instants, I can't play interrupts, I can't play sorceries or abilities requiring an activation cost. Well, I can play a creature, I can attack with a creature. Initially, you couldn't even play a creature because you couldn't tap lands because abilities require an activation cost included tapping lands.
Yeah.
I don't
Wow.
think we ever played it like that.
Yeah. I feel like we probably didn't. We probably missed that controversy because it seems like it was short-lived,
Yeah.
according to the article here. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like too strong that way. I feel like just common sense. We're like, no, it can't mean that.
It does seem too strong. I'm sure that probably was not their intention when they first printed the card. Back
I
to the
doubt it.
article. Then, right before the extended Pro Tour, Reason prevailed and Abeyance was transformed into merely a very good spell. Go ahead and play your creatures. It's still good. Just let them play the creatures. It's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Which caused some deck designers to complain about a last-minute change in the metagame. I can see that. I'd be irritated if I was a tournament grinder and I had 4 Abeyances in my deck because I thought they were preventing my opponents from tapping lands, and all of a sudden you change the rules on me right when I'm about to play a big tournament. But lucky
Yeah.
for me, I was never a tournament grinder. I was just kitchen table guy.
Yeah. You play enchantments too, by the way, just to point that out.
Yes. Well, yes. The way it works and the way we always thought it worked. Yes, because you can tap mana, you can play enchantments. But yeah, this way, what Flores is describing in the earliest days at the tournament on the tournament scene, you couldn't even play enchantments because you couldn't tap the mana. Anyways.
Too strong.
So I remember, so that's not how we played the card. I used it to counter counters or to put up a like a one-turn defense grid against a counter or something, you know. And for what he mentions in the next paragraph. So he then goes on to say, this little spell caused quite a commotion. It isn't difficult to see. Abeyance has a uniquely outstanding three-word phrase tacked onto the end of its rules text, the panacea of playability, that holy grail of 2-mana instants. Of course it got noticed, and of course it got played. That three-word phrase, of course, is draw a card. So, you know, anytime people see a spell, especially a low mana cost spell that says draw a card, they're drawn to it. If it does anything else decent, it's probably going to get a lot of play. Even after Abeyance's term as a Time Walk was up, it was still popular as an anti-combo card. That's how I always used it. Eventual Pro Tour champion Matt Lindy became temporarily the most popular player on the planet en route to his 1998 U.S. Nationals win, when he answered Mike Long's Cadaverous Bloom combo sequence with 3 wicked syllables. What are those syllables, Alex?
Abeyance.
Abeyance, exactly. So that's Abeyance. That's what Mike Long has to say about Abeyance. Not Mike Long, Mike Flores, the other Mike from the early days of MTG. Not the MTG supervillain, Mike. This is the other Mike. Do you have anything that you'd like to add about Abeyance, Alex? Anything you want to say?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. On to the next card Flores mentions, Ophidian. Taking a sip, a beverage. Ophidian is 2 colors, 1 blue. Summon Snake. It's 1/3. And it has a activated ability of 0, draw a card. Ophidian deals no combat damage this turn. Use this ability only if Ophidian is attacking and unblocked, and only once each turn. This is a newer printing I have up on the screen right now. Wording's a little bit different. Whenever Ophidian attacks and isn't blocked, you may draw a card. This is worded in a better way, I believe.
Yeah.
If you do, Ophidian assigns no combat damage this turn. So,
yeah.
I wrote this as a reserve list card, but it is not. That is a mistake. It is not a reserve list card. It has a rating of 3.463 on Gather, a current market price of 9 cents. If it was a reserve list card, it would probably be more expensive than 9 cents. That's also the market price of the original Weatherlight printing. Well, it was also printed in not much. It's not a reserve list card, but it's only been printed in a World Championship deck and a couple dual decks. People just don't care about it that much. Doesn't see a lot of play. This is a card from Weatherlight that I know for a fact that I sleeved up. I know that I gave this a try, but I can't at all remember what I used it in, and I never really stuck with it. I never really built a deck that was like heavy on Ophidian. I imagine I just put it in some sort of generic like blue-red or blue-white type 1.5 deck where I was like, hey, maybe this will give me some card draw. Give it a try. But I never went heavy on Ophidian. And I think the key to really making this card shine is to go even heavier on counter magic than I ever went, because the combination of card draw with excessive counter magic can really shut your opponent down totally. And that is what we saw some people do with Ophidian at very high competitive levels. From the article, he says, if I can find this, he said somewhere in here, here we go. In those days gone by, the blue counter spells were cheap, plentiful, and many times renewable. You know how you hate playing an awkward mana spell, say 3 of your 5 mana or some such, and you get hit with a remand? Try Memory Lapse when the opponent is hitting you with an Ophidian. You don't get to play another land, you get to play the same spell, but Ophidian is going to ensure that if it is any good, it won't resolve the next time either. The idea being that you have a deck full of, you know, cheap blue counter spells. You can play tempo cards like Memory Lapse to temporarily counter your opponent's spell, put it back on your on the top of your deck. Hit them with Ophidian, draw a card. Since your deck is full of cheap and oftentimes renewable counter spells, many times that card you're going to draw is going to be another counter. So good luck casting that spell that you thought you were going to get to recast next turn after it's been memory lapsed. You know what I'm saying, Alex? You get the idea? Heavy on counter spells, Ophidian for the card draw to draw those counter spells and just kind of shut your opponent out from doing anything. Well, I'd never really put this card to work in 1997. Others did. There are some classic decks we need to learn about and go through in future episodes. He mentions a little bit about this in the article. As horrible as it was to play against Ophidian, it was amazing to play behind, and it inspired numerous great players to the early heights of their careers. Brian Kibler won his first Grand Prix with a Brian Schneider Ophidian deck, and John Finkel's most famous creation arguably was Forbidian, his Forbid plus Ophidian blue control strategy. Those two cards played quite well together. I don't know if you know Forbid, Alex. This is a pre-modern era counterspell that we never played with. I think it was printed in Exodus. I left out the B. Forbid. It has a downside. It's not just a pure counter. It's 1 colorless, 2 blue, counter target spell. So it's a counter spell for 3, essentially. But as a buyback, choose and discard 2 cards. So that seems kind of hefty to have to discard 2 cards just to get your counterspell back to then play the counterspell again for 3. But if you're running it in a deck with Ophidian and maybe some other blue card draw, you're getting a lot of cards in your hand.
Yeah, and late in the game, maybe you have some like extra islands in your hand that you don't mind dumping.
If you're managing to get through with your Ophidian consistently drawing extra cards, yeah, you're going to have like a handful of islands or something. It doesn't say discard two spells. You can get rid of excess land that you don't need. Anything to add about Ophidian, Alex? Did you ever play with Ophidian?
No, I didn't. When I looked at this though, I did get excited and I was like, maybe I should try to play with this a little bit more, because a card that I like that this made me immediately made me think of is Tolarian Entrancer, which I've mentioned several times before, I'm sure.
Is that also from Weatherlight? It's the guy with the creepy eye?
Yes. Creepy eye guy, also from Weatherlight, has a similar effect, but instead of being, and I misremembered it right when I looked at Ophidian, because I was like, oh, I should be playing Ophidian instead of this guy, probably. But they're a little bit different. Tolarian Entrancer's ability works if it gets blocked, not if it goes through. So if it gets blocked, it steals a creature from them. So, slightly different, but it reminded me of that. It seemed like they're doing some, kind of similar things here in Weatherlight with some creatures. But yeah, it made me want to play with Ophidian a little bit. Try it out.
Try it out. Some kind of Weatherlight focused mono blue deck. Do I block? Do I don't block? That doesn't make sense. Do I block? Do I not block? That's what I meant to say. Next card. Is that Tolarian Tolarian Entrancer? That is
That's reserve list.
Reserve list.
Yeah.
$1.78, people. It's been speculated on a couple times. It gets up to $5 or $10 here and there. Next card that Mike Flores mentioned in the article is Buried Alive. Buried Alive is 2 colorless, 1 black sorcery. Search your library for up to 3 creature cards and put them in your graveyard. Shuffle your library afterwards. Straightforward. First printed in Weatherlight, then in Odyssey, some Commander products. Most recently, I wonder if this image is up on, I bet it's up on Scryfall. Most recently printed in the Monty Python Secret Lair that not many people were able to get their hands on. Perfect.
Yeah.
Secret Lair treatment for this card. Bring out your dead.
Yeah.
Bring out your dead. Rating of 4.441 on Gatherer. Current market price of, I wrote $6.80. Kind of surprised this is as expensive as it is because I just think of it as being ubiquitous, printed multiple times in a couple of different large sets, but
Oh,
gets a lot of use too, I guess. It's a very good card.
yeah, super strong. I mean, cornerstone of, a reanimator deck where you're trying to cheat out big creatures, tutor for them, and then pull them out. And yeah, I have it in a couple decks.
I haven't put together a graveyard deck yet or a reanimator deck yet. Never really have, but I definitely have thought about it over the last couple of years. I'm like, I just got to build something reanimation focused. And I picked up a playset of these like early on, a couple years ago or so. And haven't put them to use yet, but I will eventually. And yeah, like you said, any deck with that focus is going to run some Buried Alives. Back to the article. Mike Flores says, I know it probably seems novel to you reading this in 2007. Now we're in actually 2024. We're still reading Mike Flores' articles. After years of hermit druids, cephalid illusionists, and flamekin zealots, but Buried Alive was a rough deck to play against in 1997. If you weren't prepared to play against Ashen Ghouls, you were punished and severely. If you didn't understand the math that your Incinerate wasn't really getting you anywhere, you got killed. Wrath of God, garbage. Phyrexian Furnace, the inset solution was often too slow. So there were a lot of things, you could do once you packed your graveyard with creatures using Buried Alive. Ashen Ghoul coming straight and hasty out of the graveyard was one of those things. And it is true that inset solution, Phyrexian Furnace, could only deal with one of those cards in your graveyard at a time. So often too slow to keep you alive. Of course, since the days of Ashen Ghoul, graveyard decks have only become even more ridiculous. Alex, do you have anything you'd like to add about Buried Alive?
I don't think so, no.
I
Nothing that
don't know
wouldn't
what
just is more obvious. Like I just like it. It's good.
I don't know what Cephalid Illusionist is. Cephalid Illusionist, one colorless, one blue, 1/1. A Cephalid Wizard. That's cute. Whenever Cephalid Illusionist becomes the target of a spell or ability, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. 2 colorless, 1 blue, tap. This turn prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target creature you control. This turn prevent all combat damage that we dealt to and dealt by target creature you control. So he could fog out individual combat,
Uh-huh. Including himself if he's a blocker.
including himself. I got to think about how this card was exploited.
I think he's probably talking about, just in this context, about people being used to decks that whatever stock their graveyard up with good things.
Yeah.
Uh
I just wonder what people did with the Cephalid Illusionist to like consistently stock your graveyard. Obviously, it
yeah, no,
wasn't
it's
just,
probably part of a combo, part of a
yeah.
deck that I don't know. Yeah.
I have to do some research on that one. Flamekin Zealot, I don't even know what set this is from. This is a modern frame card. 1 colorless, 2 red, 1 white. Elemental Berserker, 2/2. When Flamekin Zealot enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain haste until end of turn. Got to think about that one also. What does it have to do with graveyard? Maybe it
I
doesn't
feel like
have
you
anything
just
to
have
do
to
with the
know what
graveyard.
decks these cards were in
Yeah,
back in
maybe he's just
2007.
mentioning different cards that are like linchpins of decks that were very difficult to play against at the time. Super, competitive decks. Anyways, that's Buried Alive. Back to the article. Next card that Mike Flores mentioned is Either Flash. Alex, I mentioned Either Flash an episode or two ago, and I said Either Flash. And I thought to
Sorry.
myself, what am I doing, man? This was like 20, 30 episodes we talked about Either Flux from Homelands. We might have talked about it multiple times on the podcast. And we had a conversation about how you pronounce that word. What's the appropriate pronunciation? And we even, we had a little AI voice actually speak it, speak the word out loud to us. Either Flash, Either Flash. I said Either Flash. I'm correcting myself now. The card is Either Flash. It is 2 colorless, 2 red, enchantment from Weatherlight. Whenever any creature comes into play, Either Flash deals 2 damage to that creature. We got the 7th edition art right here. That is a creature coming onto the battlefield, and it is being flashed by the Either. It's passing through
coming
damage.
out of the ether.
First printed in Weatherlight, then 6th edition and
going
7th edition. This is the 7th edition printing. What did you say, Alex? I was talking.
Sorry, no, I was interrupting you. Well, speculating about the art on the card.
Okay.
It's going into the ether, maybe, or first I said coming out, but now since it does damage to the creature, maybe that's what's happening. It's getting like sucked out of the physical realm and into the ether, and that's why it's taking 2 damage.
But yeah, it's trying to pass through the Either onto the battlefield.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, it is. It's okay.
This is what I'm imagining.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's at before it's summoned to the battlefield. This is a great mystery in life. Like, I don't know where I was at before I showed up here.
Yeah.
In
the ether.
So I don't know where this creature was at, but it just shows up, and while entering the battlefield, it has to pass through the Either. It is damaged. It's dealt 2 damage. This guy looks like he could deal with 2 damage.
Not if it's a flame tongue Kavu.
It looks like a flame tongue Kavu. Is that what you said?
I said not if it's a flame tongue Kavu.
Oh.
It kind of looks like it could be one, and those are 4/2.
They are 4/2. That's true. Yeah.
But you're
So
right.
this card
does look like a big monster.
That is one more thing Either Flash can deal with, and I'm gonna talk about how maybe I didn't fully appreciate this card. I might start playing it because it can actually deal with a lot of problematic things that you do have to deal with in the pre-modern format.
I'm thinking I underestimated it too.
I read what it did, right? Yes, I did. First printed in Weatherlight, then 6th and 7th edition. Rated 4.256 on Gather, a current market price of 61 cents in the original Weatherlight printing. From the article, Mike Flores says, in Either Flash, especially in the same debut tournament as Abeyance, I found a stop sign that more completely eviscerated the underprepared than basically any other card. This paragraph really brought me around on Either Flash. And
I saw this too.
Ever has before. I'll say that again. That more completely eviscerated the underprepared than basically any other card I have played against before or since. Now, this was 2007, so a lot's happened since then. So there might be another.
But still, it's
a lot of time. 97 to 2007, 10 years. He hadn't seen a card like this. There was just nothing that some decks could do against this enchantment. I was playing a black-blue beatdown deck with Mana War, Fallen Ascari, and Necrotal, as many people did at that time. Not one of my main deck creatures could live through a single Either Flash. It was like the game started off with Meddling Mage set to my deck. That's what set off a light bulb in my head. Meddling Mage set to my deck. I had always thought of this card as like good against weenie decks, but it sounds just even better phrased that way because I've learned the power of Meddling Mage since we've started playing pre-modern. A Meddling Mage against an entire deck. It's amazing. The downside is it costs 4 mana, right?
Yeah.
So you're going
to... But it keeps working for you.
It keeps working for you. I just mentioned the downside because if you're playing against an opponent who has a lot of 1/1s, 2/2s that Either Flash is really going to be able to handle, to hose, there's a chance that opponent's maybe going to be able to race out enough beef on their side of the battlefield before you can get your Either Flash out to protect yourself sufficiently. Alex, as you know, I've been playing a Varchild's War Riders deck. I have considered either Flash in the Varchild War Riders deck. People online have recommended it to me. I have not been playing it, even though I like the card. But now I think I'm going to definitely put it in my sideboard and board it in against weenie decks, or maybe even potentially some blue-white control decks, because I like the idea of using either Flash as a meddling mage against meddling mages. You sons of bitches. And yes, meddling mage is 2 casting costs, and this is 4. So again, you're running into that issue. Some of the creatures you're going to want to deal with using either Flash, they're already going to be on the battlefield. But I have other things in my Varchild's War Riders deck to deal with 2/2s too. So. But I like this. So if I have this in my sideboard in War Riders, I bring it in against weenie decks. Now, against a weenie deck, the Ether Flash isn't just going to be dealing with all the survivor tokens that I'm giving my opponent with the Varchild's War Riders, which is one use case of Ether Flash and Varchild's War Riders decks. It's also going to be acting as a sort of meddling mage against the weenies. Do you have anything you'd like to add about Ether Flash, Alex?
Yeah, a couple things actually. Like, I don't know if any of this is redundant, but like the first thing I think we kind of sort of addressed, but it's kind of like read between the lines, is that this works on 2 toughness creatures, and there are a lot, like we're talking about meddling mage, there are a lot of strong creatures that are either 1 or 2 toughness, at least in pre-modern. It can kill Mothers of Runes and all sorts of like little utility creatures, or some 2/2 creatures like in this guy's like black blue deck that maybe like overall you're not too worried about because they can get bigger or do some other things, but you aren't prepared for that. So I think it's good at killing not just 1/1 weenies, but some like slightly beefier things. And along with that, since it's in red, you can do the extra damage if you need to.
Yes.
If they cast a 5/5, now your lightning bolt can finish it off after it comes into play from the Ether Flash. So that was one thing I started to really think about, is that I could use that as a way to soften up creatures and then finish them off with simoons or lightning bolts or whatever, earthquakes. And then I think finally, like, you were talking about people racing you and getting creatures out first. It might be a decent strategy to pair it with bounce effect. You could play blue-red with bounce spells, and if they get something out, you can't, like, I don't know if that's going too far out of your way. You could just play more red and lightning bolt them instead of bouncing them, but you have different options.
Depends what deck you're playing.
Yeah.
They're both valid, yeah.
Yeah.
Both valid options. Okay.
So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I've definitely overlooked it.
So yeah. I'm digging Ether Flash even more than I was before I read this article. Next card, Flores mentioned, is Gaia's Blessing, a card we've talked about multiple times on the show. 1 colorless, 1 green, sorcery. Target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library. It has that special 3-word phrase, that panacea of playability. Draw a card. When Gaia's Blessing is put into your graveyard from your library, shuffle your graveyard into your library. First printed in Weatherlight, then Dominaria. It has a bunch of special printings. 4.508 on Gatherer. People always like this card. Current market price of 81 cents in the original Weatherlight. From the article, of all the cards in Weatherlight, including the World Warping Abeyance and the Door Opening Buried Alive, in my opinion, the most significant was Gaia's Blessing. We've talked about this card, like I said before on the show, and we've every time mentioned that we originally thought of this as anti-Millstone tech. From in the time, that's when this first came out, it was anti-Millstone tech. Playing a Millstone deck, have fun milling my whole deck. I'm putting a Gaia's Blessing in. Thank you very much. Reshuffle and everything. Try again, bucko. As Jordan Peterson would say, bucko. Quoting.
I was going to say, my first thought about this card, trying to evaluate it far removed from that time period, is that, it was only a matter of time before they printed something like this as a among other cards, as a bit of a foil to mill decks.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I don't really know the timeline of mill decks and like when they were stronger or weaker, I'm sure up and down at various points in the olden days. So I wasn't sure where exactly this fits in. But he says right there in the article that, it was a prominent, finishing method for control decks at the time, which I
Yeah.
thought was the case. Uh,
Yeah, Millstone, I remember we call it old school now, but I mean, it was like type 1 back then. It wasn't that far from 97. I mean, 93 was the beginning of the game.
uh-huh.
But the people that had the old cards, the older guys that played heavy like white blue control focus decks with their power, uh, one method for those decks to win the game was often just millstone.
Uh-huh.
Swords every creature you play, counter every spell you try to
Yeah.
cast, and just mill you out.
Or to just mill you out with, and I'm not sure exactly what year or what time period this started to happen, but like, milling them out without even using the millstone. Just by like being ahead of them in the number of
Yeah.
cards in your deck and doing some other spells that work like millstone.
There were things other than millstone around, prior to Weatherlight 2, Helm of Obedience.
Mhm.
I feel like that was used for, I mean, that would mill you plus steal a creature when you finally got to a creature.
Mhm. And just, making people draw cards faster, having things that can, shuffle your cards back in so that you don't run out of cards, you
Yeah.
know, card decks that were more designed to make your opponent draw out.
So back to the article. Originally positioned as an answer to annoying Millstone decks, Millstone was the then preferred kill method for blue-white control. You just mentioned that. Guy's Blessing eventually became the win condition of choice itself. Brian Schneider used to scoff at Kjeldaron Outpost, one of the most sit-there finishing cards in the history of do-nothings. Real men, he said, only needed a pair of blessings to kill, that and the will to play fast enough. It also, he mentions this too, it then made early Oath of Druids decks possible. Just as it would defend a player from being decked by Millstone, so too would the blessing keep you from your own bad
Ah,
oath.
okay.
Now we see Oath of Druid decks all the time with no Guy's Blessing because they oath to something that's like so big, bad, and beefy that who cares if you just put, 35 of your cards in the graveyard before you got to your creature. You're going to kill your opponent in the next 2 turns anyways, so you don't need to have that many cards in your deck. You know what I'm saying? Also, like the Terravor decks, you want to fill that graveyard. Fill it up, baby.
Yeah.
Get as many lands in there as possible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, these days when we see Oath of Druids decks in pre-modern, they don't care about having a Guy's Blessing. It's not needed. But apparently they would sometimes use it back in the day to get some cards back if you had a bad oath. And also, as we've talked about before, I don't know if he mentions this. He mentions, it's on the cantrip All-Star Squad, blah, blah, blah. But we've also mentioned when talking about this card that, it's more than just Millstone tech, Oath of Druid tech. It's a decent way to play more than 4 of your favorite spells.
Yeah.
I saw this talked about when we read a Sam Black article. I can't remember exactly what article that was, but he talked about his love for Swords to Plowshares. He also talked about Gaia's Blessing, and when he would run those cards together in a deck like the Parfait decks that were legal in pre-modern before land tax was banned. He would just use Gaia's Blessing to go shuffle 3 of those Swords to Plowshares he already cast back into his deck, and then draw a boatload of cards with his land tax scroll rack and such, and replay those swords. So, good luck getting a creature out because he has 4 swords and then Guy's Blessings to replay those swords. And he'll find them with all the card draw, so you can use them in decks like that. Do you have anything you want to add about Guy's Blessing, Alex?
I think that's it.
That's it. Guy's Blessing, great card. And then Flores moves on to Null Rod. So I say Abeyance pops into my head when I think Weatherlight. Null Rod is the second Weatherlight card that pops into my head. Null Rod is 2 colorless artifact. Used to say players cannot play any artifact abilities requiring an activation cost. Now it says activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. First and only printing is in Weatherlight, reserve list, rating of 4.576 on Gatherer, current market price of $94.19. I remember this always being a good card, but it was never a card that I remember our play group ever using because like none of us really played artifact heavy group decks. So it was like it didn't really come in handy often when we were.
I don't really ever remember seeing it. I don't think any of us had it, you know? Like I didn't have one. I don't
That's
know if
also
anyone I
yeah.
knew had one.
That's also a very strong possibility. We just didn't even have them, but we
Yeah.
also didn't make any effort to trade for them because we didn't need them.
Yeah.
I'd
This
imagine
was
if you were.
still, I know this is hard to like fathom even for us maybe to like remember back, but this is still an era where like we didn't know everything that was in the set. Like we were buying packs and opening them and like we knew what we saw and maybe you got like a magazine that had a price list of the set, but you didn't really know what all those cards did.
Yeah.
You maybe knew the ones that they did a write up on or you know.
We also weren't in a group where like we were each buying like a whole box or two of booster packs. Like a
Yeah,
lot of
we
the
were pretty
times
casual. We had a small group and we were casual, so it wasn't like there were a ton of cards coming through.
a new set would come out, I'd buy like 5 boosters or something.
Yeah, it just depended on how long it was out. I don't feel like Weatherlight was around for too long either.
I did not buy a lot of Weatherlight. I'm not even sure. I kept my rares. I got rid of most of my cards, but I kept almost all of my rares, except for the expensive ones that I sold and made it what I thought was a good profit on. But if I would have kept them even longer, it would have been much better for me, but I didn't. But I kept a lot of my rares. I had a tiny little box. And I don't remember. So now over the last 2.5 years, I've added a lot of cards. But if I think back to like how many Weatherlight rares were in that tiny little box, I definitely fewer than 10, which means I definitely opened fewer than 10
Yeah,
boosters.
I feel like I had a Weatherlight stack, that was like this. Probably was like, 8 packs or something that I bought.
So this card, what I wanted to say about it is it's only gotten better over time. And I think it's
Yeah,
it's never going to get worse. It's just going to keep getting better because
yeah,
they're just going to keep printing artifacts that this card neuters. It probably first became a necessity in competitive play around Urza's block. That's what I'm guessing. That is when Tinker decks first exploded. I'm not even guessing. I don't know why I say I'm guessing because he mentions it here in the article. He says, I remember a pro tour as late as 1999 or 2000 where some versions of Tinker were playing 3 copies of Phyrexian Colossus. I mean, you can't untap one either with its own ability or Voltaic Key if your opponent has Null Rod. So the strategy became to hit once, tinker your Colossus for the next Colossus, hit again, repeat. So, this is an era where tinker decks were huge. You could tinker out a Phyrexian Colossus, which was 7 mana, 8/8, doesn't untap during your next untap step. Pay 8 life to untap Phyrexian Colossus. If your Null Rod's out if a Null Rod is out on your opponent's side, you can't pay 8 life to untap it. You also can't activate your Voltaic Key to untap the Colossus. So it neutered one of the biggest and most explosive decks from this era, and it continues to do that with any sort of explosive artifact deck that your opponent wants to play. Just cast your Null Rod. And then I'm going to move on to the last card that he mentions in this article, unless you wanted to say anything about Null Rod, Alex.
think so.
I think we said everything there is to say. Winding Canyon. Winding Canyons. Winding Canyons is a land. You can tap it to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. Or you could pay 2 colorless and tap it. Until end of turn, you may play creature cards whenever you could play instants. First and only printing in Weatherlight. It's a reserve list card. There's John Avon landscape art. Rated at 4.260 on Gather, at current market price of $19.95. I have always thought this card was cool, but I've never played it. I'm almost 100% sure I've never had it in a deck. I might have put it in a deck once for like a minute just because, but like the deck wasn't built around it at all and wasn't really built in a way to exploit it. I don't think I ever played it. I do have one though. This is one of the rares that I pulled out of a Weatherlight pack back in 1997 that I kept. I do have one Winding Canyons. So that's why I say maybe I played it. I don't know. But if I did, it wasn't like a regular, didn't make any regular appearances in my decks. All I've ever thought about doing with it is, flashing creatures on my opponent's turn to cast a surprise blocker. That's it. Nothing
Yeah.
particularly.
I'd like to play it with like death touch creatures. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. What do I want to say about this? I think he mentions this in the article. I think this is from the article. No, I read this somewhere else. Declaring attackers is a part of the combat phase. After attackers are declared, both players receive priority to cast spells and activate abilities before moving to the declare blocker step. So this is just me finding out for sure that you could just activate this and then flash in a blocker after your opponent's attacked.
Okay.
So declare attackers. After attackers are declared, both players receive priority to cast spells and activate abilities before moving to the declare blocker step. So if I have a Winding Canyons out and mana open, you have a Ravenous Baloth. You say, I'm attacking with my Ravenous Baloth. I can then activate Winding Canyons after you declare your attacker, and then cast a creature spell as if it had flash. Then it hits the battlefield. Then I declare that creature as a blocker.
Yeah.
Your Ravenous Baloth. So, that's what people would think they would be able to use Winding Canyons for. That's all I ever thought about using it for. In the article, he describes a particularly unique play he once saw from somebody playing Winding Canyons. The coolest thing about it, I always thought, was demonstrated in Andrew Cuneo's original Draw Go. You could activate Winding Canyons, then play a Steel Golem on your opponent's turn. Without passing priority, you could play another Steel Golem in response. Because the first Steel Golem was still on the stack, there would be no prohibition on the second or any other creature. Thus, 2 Steel Golems could play on the same team at the same time. That might be the only way you can get 2 Steel Golems out on the same team at the same time, perhaps. Steel Golem is a creature from Weatherlight. 3 colorless, 3/4, artifact creature. You can't play creature spells. But using a Winding Canyon, you could flash out 2 Steel Golems back to back on the stack.
Okay.
This just reminded me of Steel Golem. It's a weird card, but it's also a 3/4 for 3. Maybe play this in an otherwise creatureless control deck. I never really see it, but not terrible.
Yeah, I've seen that and thought about it and then just never done it, but
that's what I've done too. I could also donate it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There you go.
What if you put this in an Illusions of Grandeur deck? I got to think back to those decks. Those decks are already so finely tuned just to your particular combo. There might not be room for the Steel Golem in it. But that's another thing for you to donate potentially. You have anything you'd like to say about Winding Canyons, Alex? Winding Canyons. Okay, that's it for Winding Canyons. That's it for now, at least, for our discussion on Weatherlight. That's it for this 1997 article, 2007 article written by Mike Flores called The Weatherlight Cards That Changed the World. Alex is putting his finger up. Did I say something incorrect, or did you want to
I just know before we stop talking about Weatherlight, I wanted to mention just 1 or 2 more cards really quickly. We don't have to talk about them too much, but I didn't know if you were going to pull some of these up, so I never mentioned them when we were at the beginning of our discussion of cards we remember from Weatherlight. And I just
Hit
wanted
me,
to throw out
Alex.
a quick shout out
Hit
to
me.
Thundermare. I thought you were going to mention it, so I didn't mention it right away. Thundermare was one that we noticed back in the day. I think we were,
Oh yeah.
kids were excited about. Um, you can pull it up. It's a big, big red hasty creature.
I'm a fan of Thundermare, and I'm currently building a deck with Thundermare in it. You haven't seen it yet. I haven't played it yet. I like the Weatherlight art. I'm gonna pull up the Weatherlight art.
Yeah, the art's sweet. One red, five colorless, 5/5, unaffected by summoning sickness. And when it comes into play, tap all other creatures. So, you know, still back in the area where in a red deck you didn't have maybe a ton of options for like I don't know what I want to say here, but it was still appreciated because you wanted something that could do a big blast of damage at once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So fun card, cool art. Mana Web was one that I got excited about when it came out because I had been working on a Mana Barbs deck. These days with rules changes and no more mana burn and stuff, this isn't quite as cool, but uh, it's held a little bit of value and still a pretty cool card. Three colorless artifact. Whenever any land target opponent controls is tapped for mana, tap all lands he or she controls that can produce any type of mana that land can produce.
So basically, you're forcing your opponent to tap out every turn they want to play a spell.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how many different
Right. Yeah.
types of
Almost
mana
tap
their
out or
lands
tap
produce.
out a lot of their stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And then Serenity and Aura of Silence. I think people probably know those cards because they're fairly decent. Uh,
I always get them mixed up. Like I can't.
well, they're similar.
Yeah. Serenity is Berry.
One,
Okay.
one white, one colorless enchantment during your upkeep, bury all artifacts and enchantments. So it just stays down and keeps doing that. Uh, pretty big effect for just 2 mana.
During your upkeep, bury all enchantments and artifacts. It buries itself, right?
Oh yeah, I guess it does. Yeah. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah. But you play it, so that means your opponent's upkeep comes first.
Right.
They get to do whatever they wanted to do for that one more turn with their artifacts and enchantments. And then during your upkeep, during your next upkeep, everything gets buried.
Yeah. So this makes me want to like play around with it now and figure out a way to like, abuse it or get around some of its downside.
And then Aura of Silence is the one that you have to pay 2 colorless more to cast enchantments and artifacts.
It's white, white one, I think.
Serenity's triggered ability destroys itself too. That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's obvious. I just wasn't even thinking when I read that. Yeah.
Aura of Silence, 1 colorless, 2 white. Artifact and enchantment spells cost target opponent an additional 2 colorless to play. And you can sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. I always forget that part.
Yeah. So that's a pretty fun card.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, I didn't know you weren't going to talk about some of these, so I didn't mention them earlier. But there are just a few more Weatherlight cards that always kind of stood out to me or I remembered from the set.
Okay. No, this is a card that I definitely consider for sideboards often.
Uh-huh. I see it in premodern decks.
Yeah, depends on the meta, what's going on at the time, but there's almost always multiple decks with pain in the ass enchantments that you might want to make it more difficult for your opponent to cast, especially, and also sometimes artifacts. Okay. That's it for Weatherlight for now. Okay, let's move on to segment 2, Alex. Segment 2 is a casual segment. Not that the previous segment wasn't a casual segment, and not that every segment we've ever done on this show wasn't a casual segment. I'm not saying that the whole show is a casual Magic the Gathering podcast, but this segment is an especially casual segment. I mean, I didn't play anything out really, but like I said earlier in the intro, I found two local game stores next to my house that have bulk bins, and they charge 5 cents or less for the bulk. I went into the second place and I was trying to get the guy to tell me like how much the stuff costs, and he's like 5 cents, but like also, if you build a deck with them, they could just be free. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna build decks with these. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, people they come in. I tell them if you can make a deck like right here out of the stuff in here, just 60 cards, I'll just give it to you for free." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to
What?
build the deck. I don't want to build the deck right now. I just want to like rifle through stuff and find bulk that I want to use for decks eventually, or for like playing with friends eventually, or drafting. Like I don't have specific deck ideas right now. So you're like pressuring me. I'm feeling pressured a little bit. Can I just pay you?" And then later I had this huge pile and he's like, "I trust you, buddy. You could just take that off for $10," which if I paid a nickel for every card, it would have been closer to like $25. But I was like, "Okay, are you sure? I really want to pay." He's like, "I need to pay." But yeah, he
Oh,
does have
cool.
that rule. Like if you come down here and I could take you there, you could just get bulk for free if you make a deck out of it. And he has lands too, so you could just make a deck out of like commons and uncommons, just a cheap little deck. But anyways, I've been looking for bulk for a while. When we first got back into Magic, I went to some LGSs in the area, and I told you, I just wanted to go in and like rifle through boxes, maybe
I
find some
know.
cheap lands to buy, maybe flip through some binders, and like I wasn't
Hmm.
finding that. I was finding places that just had, a selection of cards in glass cases, all priced according to whatever the current internet price was. And then sometimes even if they had prices on it, they'd still like before you checked out, they'd still look it up like in real time right in front of your face. And
Oh,
if the
jeez.
price was a little bit higher now
You
online,
can't
they
do
would.
both. You have to pick one or the other.
I know. And then they had binders sometimes in the back too, but they're like, no, you can't look at the binders. Do you have any cards you want? And I'm like, well, I want a lot of stuff. I'm just getting back in the game. I just kind of want to browse. And if something catches my eye, I might go, ooh, and then I'll just buy it from you, and then you'll make money. And they're like, no, we don't let people flip through the binders. But anyways, I finally found bulk. I want to talk a little bit about what I got, Alex. One of the things that I first started buying when we started playing Magic again was just friggin' basic lands, because I was trying to build pre-modern decks and I didn't have any lands because I threw all my lands away in the early 2000s. So I couldn't make a deck without lands. So what I had to do, well, I went around town to some of these same LGSs and was like, "Do you have any lands?" Most places didn't even have lands. Some had boxes of lands, but they were all modern lands. I couldn't find any like Mirage, Tempest era lands, Urza Saga's lands. So I was like ordering them on TCG Player. And then people will, yeah, sell them to you for like 10 cents, but then they charge shipping. And oftentimes they wouldn't post like more than four. So like the best I could do would be buy like four Mirage Forests for like a quarter a piece, and then also like $1.99 shipping. It was very annoying. This guy had lands in his bulk boxes. I got all these lands for free, baby.
Oh, those are
They're
all
just
lands?
they're revised lands. I found some revised lands. I was excited about that.
Oh, yeah.
Swamps, revised swamps, Alex. And then I found pre-modern lands, Mirage Forests, Tempest Islands, Tempest Mountains. So I got a good
You,
stack here of like
you
I
didn't
can
find
make.
any unlimited lands. No unlimited.
No, no, no.
Ah, damn. Where are they? I'm looking for them. I can't find them anywhere.
Revised planes.
Nice.
You can buy them online, but yeah,
I know, yeah, you can buy them online, but
I am surprised I don't see any unlimited lands.
game stores never seem to have unlimited lands or low dollar like unlimited commons, that sort of thing.
I thought the same thing. There actually is one game store nearby who doesn't have bulk for me to go through, even though they do have plenty of bulk somewhere in the back, but they don't just let you dig through all the stuff. But they did have a couple boxes that were full of like antiquities, Arabian Nights, the Dark Four Horsemen, commons,
Hmm.
and some unlimited commons. And I did pick some stuff up from them in the past. That was a very nice shop, actually. but I couldn't get a fat stack of lands for free, which I'm very excited
No.
about because
And we
all
need
the
that.
decks I
See,
want to
we need
build.
that so we can make cubes of old, low-powered cards.
Exactly. Some other things I found, Alex, after the lands, I was excited about the lands. None of these are, big deals or anything, but I got some legendary bulk, Legends bulk. I was very excited to pick up Legends Commons for 5 cents. Uh, Keepers of the Faith, just a
Okay.
vanilla. Ghosts of the Damned, summon ghosts, a terrible creature from Legends, actually.
Hmm. Hmm.
It is one colorless, two black, 0/2, summon ghosts. You can tap it to give target creature -1/-0 until end of turn. It is really a terrible card. Glyph. I am excited about the glyphs. If I see a
Okay.
glyph for a nickel, I will buy a glyph.
Yeah. I'll
This
buy
is
any
the
Legends card for a nickel.
this is the glyph of doom, gaseous form. This was a card that was reprinted. Was it in Chronicles? I remember being excited when it was reprinted for reasons that I can't understand because it's not really that good. But if I see a legendary gaseous form for a nickel, I buy it.
Well, again, this is going back to like in that era, there was almost nothing to use to protect creatures, you know?
Yeah.
You had very few options. Uh was reprinted in fourth, fifth, and sixth edition, and
Fourth
then
edition. Okay.
Tempest and more.
And then I got a Wall of Earth, which is a 0/6 red wall. And then I was actually
Solid,
excited about this, the Brute.
solid.
I would play the Brute in a low powered, like four horseman deck,
Okay.
a goofy little deck. It's one colorless, one red enchant creature. Target creature gets +1/+0. Pay 3 red to regenerate the creature. So it does a little something. So
Okay.
the least
Yeah.
terrible, I think.
I always like the art on Wall of Earth. It has like a real old school flavor. Looks
Yeah.
like an old Magic card.
I got a bunch of bulk from the dark.
Oh, wow, nice. And you're really tiny on my screen, but it does look like most of that is in pretty nice shape, huh?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Miracle Workers. I kind of want to I kind of want to alter some of these.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Pikeman. I got a Morale, which is actually playable, I believe. In my
Okay.
opinion, it's playable. It's not the best, but it is playable. One colorless, two white, instant, all attacking creatures gain +1/+1 till end of turn. I got some Holy Days with some Drew
Nice.
Tucker art.
Yeah, I like the art.
Sorry, that's Holy Light, not Holy Day. I got some Brainwash,
Okay.
some Squires, Alex. We talked about
Oh
Squires.
yeah. Oh yeah. I have a few squires floating around.
Festival, not a terrible card, also.
I
Not
love Festival. Festival's great.
I see a festival for a nickel in the wild, I'll buy it. A giant shark, a card that is terrible, and it's also like this is the trophy for what is definitely one of the most prestigious old school tournaments in the world. If you win, they give you a giant shark that's stamped.
Oh really?
And I think the idea is if you come back to play in the same tournament and you won the shark, you have to put the shark in your deck.
Okay.
So it kind of like neuters the champions a little bit.
Yeah.
If you're too good, you got to start running giant sharks. I think that's what happened.
That's funny.
Drowned, which is not good.
Cool though.
Cool. One colorless, one blue, summon zombie, 1/1, regenerates for one black. So if you want to play a Drudge Skeleton, but you want it to be blue, there you go. Sunken City, a playable bulk card from the dark.
Okay.
All blue creatures gain +1/+1. Yes, if you don't pay 2 blue during your upkeep, it's destroyed, but still.
It's a funny way to add in the upkeep cost after you explain the card.
Land Leeches, 2/2 first striker for 3. Not good, but there are
Not
worse
good.
cards.
Not good.
Ashes to Ashes. I thought maybe this one gained a little bit of like popularity and saw some gameplay in Commander, but I looked it up. It's still just like a few cents. So I guess not. That's one colorless, two black sorcery. Remove 2 target non-artifact creatures from the game and does 5 damage to you. But it's actually not that bad. Like in
You're
mono
right.
black
In
decks.
Commander, that's not the worst. You could take out
No.
two giant threats.
Yeah, it's not terrible at all.
the dark is just, oh man, there's so many bad cards.
Speaking of terrible, this is terrible. I got myself some marsh gases. All creatures get -2, -0 until end of turn for 1 black. Inquisition, look at player's hand, deal 1 damage for each white card in the hand, I think. Word of Binding. This is not, I don't think this is a terrible card. It's not great. It might not even be good, to be honest, but it's not terrible. 2 black
I remember the
X,
art. Oh yeah, I like tapping X creatures. That's
X
cool.
target creatures become tapped. You
No,
know,
I feel like you could do something with this. Yeah.
we're seeing these cards from Legends go up in price like crazy because of Nadu interactions, because they can target multiple creatures. But now, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, those target multiple creatures just for 1 mana.
Yeah.
This is
Or
an
they
X
do
spell.
something else too.
This is an X
But
spell, so you have to feed a bunch of mana into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I definitely play this in some kind of like limited format or cube format or something with old cards. Like,
Yes. That's kind of what these, why, like when I see these in the wild, this is kind of why I get them.
yep, me too.
Because
Yeah.
we could just, build some very low power,
Yeah.
janky decks with cheap cards from Four Horsemen.
Yep.
Merc Dwellers. Speaking of, I mean, this would be great in a low power, janky Four Horsemen deck because it can actually attack for 2. That's a big deal
It's a big deal.
when you're playing Four Horsemen jank. Venom, also, I may pick this up for the art, really. Quentin Hoover art. It's a good effect, but it's not a great card.
Mhm.
3 mana enchant creature. Anything that blocks the creature or is blocked by it is destroyed at end of combat. I was excited to see a scavenger
Oh,
float from the dark in the wild. Savian Elves? I don't have any of these.
I vaguely remember that.
It's one green, 1/1. Pay 2 green and tap. Target enchant land is destroyed. So I will put this in my sideboard and never play it.
Yeah.
Or if we're playing Four Horsemen jank and you blight my lands,
Yeah. There's just not enough enchant lands for that. You know what I mean? There's just not enough cards that can enchant lands for
when
that
you
to,
blight my land, Alex, I'm bringing in the
yeah.
elf.
I want to make
Carnivorous.
Blight work, by the way. I kind of like Blight as like an add-in for
I
land
kind of
when you already have land destruction and you want something else.
I like blight too. Carnivorous plant, the only wall that
Nice.
I think is also a carnivorous plant. This is the only one I think in Magic the Gathering. Is there another carnivorous plant that is a wall in Magic the Gathering? I don't think so. Goblins of the Flarg, classic.
Flarg, baby. I love the Flarg.
Brothers of Fire, classic.
Cool. It's a cool one.
3 Fissure, classic.
This you're paying a nickel for all of these, really? Like that's cool.
Less than a nickel.
Less than a nickel.
He gave me all of this stuff plus a whole bunch of other crap. Some of which I'm going to talk about today for a nickel. Like I said, if he had charged me a nickel for all of it, it would have probably been like 25 to 30 bucks.
Yeah.
He gave me everything for 10. So
Well,
I
that's
was
cool.
excited to get a lot of bulk from the dark. I know there are people out there, especially old school players, they have 100,000 copies of all of this stuff and it's just garbage to them and they scribble on it and they stamp it. But you know what? I also want to like draw stuff and maybe stamp it.
Yes. Yeah.
I want to alter them with ink pens, just have some fun.
And just
Play them.
have a place out of all of them in a box in case I want to, fool around.
Now, for actual play, I was actually really excited to get some Fallen Empires, and that might sound funny, but there are quite a few playable cards in Fallen Empires that I don't have copies of because I threw them away when I threw away my bulk in the early 2000s. So there's definitely some playable stuff in here. I was very excited to get an Org and a Daralore. So these are 2 like big beefy creatures from Fallen Empires that I will definitely play if I make a 93, 94 old school deck that also includes Fallen Empires. Some of the old school formats also let you have Fallen Empires. And I can't ever afford a Jizam Jin, but I can play a Delaware. Did I pronounce it correctly? Daralore. Selenite Druid. I got some Selenite Druids. We talked about this. These are all things that I want to have in my collection, but I'm very happy to not have to pay shipping to get them from TCG Play.
Yeah.
I didn't have any hymns. I just got my first play set of hymns again recently, the table guy, and I found a couple of cloaks. Not the table guy, you know, the hymns around the table. The
Yeah.
table art. Got some cloak art. My second
Nice.
favorite hymn art. Pharaoh's Mantle, Alex. Card that I forgot about. And I think it's starting to see some more play in old school. It's not in the top decks, but there's an interesting interaction with this card and another card from the dark. Pharaoh's Mantle is 2 colorless, 1 white, enchant creature. If target creature attacks and is not blocked, it may deal X plus 2 damage to any other target creature, where X is the power of the creature Pharaoh's Mantle enchants. If it does so, it deals no damage to opponent this turn.
Okay. So if the creature gets through, it deals its power plus 2 to a different creature you want it to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I remember this card. I didn't remember what it did when you said it, but I have seen this and I do remember looking at it plenty of times and thinking it's actually not, I don't think it's that bad, but I know no one ever plays it. But
it's not that bad, but like I said, it has seen some play in old school sometimes. One, it's some repeatable, direct damage to creatures in white. So it gives you some more removal in white. Although if you're playing old school in white, you do have swords already. But if you want more, you have this. But something that I didn't think about, but other people have pointed out is if you Maze of Ith, your own attacker, it attacks, but it's not blocked. So you can enchant a creature with Pharaoh's Mantle, attack, Maze of Ith to remove it from combat, and then deal damage.
That's smart.
Deal damage with the mantle. So I really like that combo.
3-card little janky combo, but I'd try it. It's definitely like kind of thing that I would try to make happen.
It is a 3-card janky combo, but 3-card janky combos are fun for budget old school. That's what it's all about.
And Maze of Ith is... Sorry, go ahead.
2 of those 3 cards are a Maze of Ith and a creature. So
yeah, I was going to say the Maze of Ith is fine on its own, even if it's not in the combo. So it's worth playing anyways. And presumably whatever good creature you have is too. So you're not like really going out.
And then I just got some what I think are like Fallen Empire staples for mono black decks that I just didn't have.
Pump Knights.
Initiates of the Ebon Hand.
Oh yeah, cool.
And then I got all the Pump Knights, Alex. I was Pump Knight-less, and now I'm just full of Pump Knights. I got all the Pump Knights.
Excellent.
Order of the Ebon Hand, all the my 3 favorite arts. I can't remember if there's
switching back to Ebon, huh?
Huh?
Switching it back to the Ebon pronunciation.
Damn it! Here's what happens, Alex. I get things in my head, and then they get stuck there. I know it's not right. And I guess there's some Order of Leapburr and Acacian Javelineers. So like these are all things that I wanted. These are going to go.
You just showed like all the best cards in Fallen Empire. So
they're going to go in black weenie and white weenie decks. I needed these cards, and I'm very excited to not have to pay shipping to get them delivered to my door. If you, loyal listener, are out there and you do want to pay shipping to get these delivered to your house, maybe through TCG Player, click our affiliate link in the description below. Buy your Pump Knights, buy your Acacian Javelineers. And then I found some pre-modern era stuff. I thought I'd talk about these because we just discussed Weatherlight. I got a Fire Whip. You're a big fan of the Fire Whip. I know that. I got my first ever gold bordered card now. I didn't have a gold bordered card. Now I have a gold bordered card. It is a Firestorm from World Championship Seattle deck, August 1998. I think this might have been a Kai Buddha. There's the signature on it. Brian Selden, damn it. This is from the Brian Selden Championship, World Championship deck. Haunting Misery, a card from Weatherlight that we talked about. It was part of the, what's that weird deck with that weird artifact? and it's all just designed about activating that artifact, cycling the artifact that
Oh, oh,
decreases cycling
oh,
cost
yeah.
by 2.
I want to call it Null Rod now, but that's not it.
It's not null rod.
Yeah.
I want to call it turbidistat, but it's definitely
The
not a
main
turbidistat.
cycling artifact that looks like a big weird telescope.
Turb is the are the letters turb in it somewhere?
I don't think so.
Fluctuator,
Fluctuator, there you go.
not turbidistat. Turbidistat is a continuous culture device, not a Magic the Gathering card. So this was in the at least some versions of the Fluctuator deck that we saw. Remove X creature cards in your graveyard from the game. Haunting Misery deals X damage to target player. So, cycle a bunch of creatures into your graveyard.
Yeah, and then finish.
Cast that. Sage Owl. This is an owl
Yeah, I love Sage Owl.
from Weatherlight. Sage Owl. I was actually reading an old Mike Flores article the other day, because we're going to talk about some point in the not too distant future some Jamie Wakefield decks. He was talking about the philosophy of Jamie Wakefield, how he builds his decks, and how he prefers to put a creature in his deck that has some effect, as opposed to just adding a spell that has that same effect, even if that non-creature spell
It's better.
is more efficient, even if
Yeah.
it costs less mana. He prefers to go the creature route. And Sage Owl was one of the cards that he mentioned, because it is 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1/1 flyer. When Sage Owl comes into play, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put them back in any order. He's like, why play an impulse when you can play a shitty impulse that's attached to a 1/1 flyer?
Yeah, and the one, I don't know what I want to say. That's mana wise, it's still just it's good. It's a 1/1 flyer with the effect and 2 mana.
That deck building philosophy that speaks to me, because I do like to have a creature with a special ability.
Yeah. I mean, you can always split it half and half. You can do 2 and 2 if you want.
Got myself an Aura of Silence, which is a much needed sideboard card. Didn't have any. This actually, some of these cards aren't super cheap either. We looked at
No,
I have
War of
Aura
Silence is a few dollars.
A
$2
nickel,
or
man.
something.
I have to spend $4 to $5 to get this from TCG Player. Imperial Armor, another Weatherlight classic. We didn't mention it today, but this is a Weatherlight classic. Very important card in many white weenie decks from this era. And then I got myself, look at this, Alex. I don't even have to order these. We talked about Ether Flash. I got myself a playset of Ether Flash from that bulk.
No way. Nice. Yeah, that Aura of Silence shouldn't have been in the bulk.
Oh, the other thing he said to me, he mentioned, if you find some stuff that in there's expensive. He doesn't really care. That's okay. So, I'm not ripping anybody off. They go through it, and they know that the prices of stuff fluctuates. And every once in a while, they'll have a card sitting in the bulk box that was, 25 cents or something on the internet when they first looked it up, when it first came in, and then maybe something spikes because it gained some kind of popularity, and all of a sudden people want it for the new hot deck, and it'll be like $10. He's like, if you find it in there, and you want to keep it, that's don't care. He goes, you're benefiting from your knowledge. So I like that kind of attitude. He's like, you're coming in here with knowledge. You're aware of the market. You're keeping up with what's going on in the world of Magic the Gathering. If you come in here, you find something that's mispriced, you benefit from it, then that's good for you. But he said the other thing you can do, if you don't want the card, you could just bring it up to us, at the front desk, and say, I found this in bulk. It's worth $10. He goes, we'll look it up. We'll price it. You can get, if you want, 70% of that price for trade-in. So if there's anything in the case you want, you can dig through our bulk. And if you find hidden gems, just bring it up to us and trade it in for more expensive cards. I like that attitude.
Wow, yeah. That's nice.
And then I found a lot of other stuff. Won't go through all of it. But I did find some Arcadian Mass cards. Flailing Soldier, we talked about this. Is Flailing Soldier a tempo machine? So now I got some Flailing Soldiers to mess around with. I was very excited to see the Hunted Wumpus. I didn't have any Hunted Wumpuses. Now I have 3 Hunted Wumpi. 3 colorless, 1 green, 6/6 beast. When Hunted Wumpus comes into play, each other player may put a creature card from his or her hand into play under his or her control. This seems like a really fun card to stick into your green stompy deck when you're playing somebody with a creatureless deck, or maybe just a deck with a few very small creatures. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Hoodwink. This is a card that I needed for my collection. Yoink.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Rishadon Footpad, also another very good card that I've never played around with, but a lot of potential here. 3 colorless, 1 blue, Pirate, 2/2. When Footpad comes into play, each opponent sacrifices a permanent unless he or she plays 2 colorless. So some sort of blue prison deck like this is a good. That's a strong card.
I mean, it says each opponent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I got a couple rebels, Ramosian sergeants, because I'm gonna build a rebel deck at some point. So I'm just picking up rebels when I saw them. Picked up a couple mercenaries. Saw a few of the mercenaries from Mercadian Masks in the box. The Cataran Kidnappers and the Strong Arm Thug. That's about the stuff I wanted to highlight. I got a lot more too. Maybe I'll talk about some of the stuff from other sets in the next episode or so. But that's the stuff I picked up from Legends to Mercadian Masks.
Very good.
But I got stuff going all the way to Scourge too. I pretty much stuff from all the sets all the way up to Scourge.
Yeah, now I want to go look through some bulk at a store. What's that? I can't see it.
Chimeric Idol. Picked up one of
Oh,
these
okay.
too. This was a main deck, maybe, but at a minimum, a sideboard card in some of the old Fires decks that we saw. So I might play this in some of my Fires. 3 colorless artifact. Activation cost 0. Tap all lands you control. Chimeric Idol becomes a 3/3 artifact creature until end of turn.
Yeah, I remember when we talked about that.
One of the cards from Prophecy that actually gets played sometimes. Those were my buys. They were old stuff, old bulk. You got some buys too, Alex. You told me about some buys.
Yeah, I got a few new things. I don't have a whole lot to talk about, but briefly highlight, I decided to go to my LGS and get a box of Bloomburrow play boosters so that we can play with them eventually one day with us and our other friends. Very excited to receive the Flubs the Fool along with it.
Hell yeah.
Flubs is hanging tough, about $15 right now. Woo!
That's the only way you can get a Flubs at this particular moment, correct?
Yeah, to buy the box from an LGS. And I'd imagine most of them are probably out by now, out of the Flubs. And then to buy it online or probably wait and it'll be less, I would assume. But I like it. I think it's super cool. The guy at the shop said everyone who's been picking them up has been excited about it, thinks it's cool. Either because they want to play with it or just because they think it's cool art and fun.
What is in the play booster? It's a play booster box, right? That's what you bought?
Yes. I mean, think draft booster. It basically took the place of what draft boosters were.
Oh, okay. So it's just a box of boosters. Is this what you got? I'm seeing
Yes.
booster box 36 packs.
36
Okay.
packs, just a booster box. And it's what they combine set and draft into play now. So, but this is what you would use to draft if you draft it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazon says fun to open, fun to play. You get the best of draft and set boosters combined into one exclamation point. That's what you said, and you said it better than Amazon.
Well, they say the best of. I mean, it's the best of and the worst of both combined together, probably.
I'm looking at an image of the play booster box. Your play booster box probably also has this on it too. It says 13 plus. I want to point that out to
Does.
anybody who's listening.
Here we go.
Who hears me say that this is a children's card game and then you get all offended. I just want to point out that your game says 13 plus on it. And you know what? I'm allowed to say that because I also play Magic the Gathering, but am totally aware of the fact that it's not just a children's card game, but it is a children's card game. If you get angry when I say that, I think that's your issue,
It's not, well,
not
okay, let's
mine.
two things. Like this isn't like you're saying, it's not a slight on the game. You're not insulting the game. You're just pointing out that in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's not the most important thing to be getting upset about, and it's something we should be having fun with, right?
It is not only a children's card game, but it is also a children's card game. Also, I will say that, you and I, Alex, we were 12 when we started playing this game. So
For
you're going to
sure,
tell me
for
this
sure
isn't a
we were.
children's card game we were playing?
Counterpoint, in all fairness, I
We weren't
don't think
playing
I can
well.
think of any adult game, like, any adult board game probably says 13 plus on it.
Children's board games, then.
I don't think you're going to find too many like 17 and up, like marked games of any type.
There was a game that I saw. It was a card game, actually, and I came across the advertisement in an old episode, not episode, old issue of The Duelist that I was reading.
Oh, yeah.
It was a perverted triple X
Yeah.
collectible card game that I found. Again, advertised in The Duelist, which was a children's gaming magazine at the time. I don't want to say perverted. I just, I say perverted. I don't necessarily mean that it's perverted, but I don't, maybe it was perverted. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it. It was sexual.
Well, that's what
It
I
was
was going to
called,
say. The only thing that would be marked at a higher age would be like if it was a sexual game.
it, it was a sexual dance. Did you ever hear that, Rudy Giuliani, soundbite? I've heard that every once in a while. I don't even know what he was talking about, but he's just going, it was a sexual dance. This is a sexual card game. It's called Xenophile, XXX Enophile.
Oh, of
Most of you
course.
pronounce Xenophile. It is below that. It says the adults only trading card game. So it was not a children's card game, but it was advertised in an almost full page advert in a magazine that was really pretty much read by children at the time. And I also looked into this. I was like, what is this? It was developed by Phil Foglio.
Oh, really?
Why am I not Googling this? I should just Google this.
We should be finding these cards and then taking them to get altered and signed by him.
XX, I wanted to see what Google would come up with. XXX Tentacion, age now. He's not alive.
Dangerous game to
XX
play.
Holic. I did look into this. I was like, oh, it's a Foglio thing. You can't actually buy them on eBay. Like, there are definitely people selling them on eBay, and they don't go for a lot. This just looks like just plain sex. I don't know if I can show that. I might have. I don't think that was a real image. Like, I don't think that wasn't a photograph. A collectible trading card game. Yeah, like here's one of the cards, Blue Opal. I don't know anything about how it works. It looks like it was also a comic. They made it into a comic as well.
That says 1989. Maybe the card game name is based off of the comic then.
Xenophile is an American comic book series published by Palliard Press and later Studio Foglio, an anthology of short, whimsical, erotic fantasy and science fiction stories written and penciled by Phil.
89 to 95.
By a different artist. Did we talk about this on the show before? Or did I just post it?
No.
I posted it online. It deals with cloning, robots, sex with the devil, love potions. I don't know how to pronounce this word. Giza. An idiosyncratic taboo. A variety of sexual activities, including things that I cannot say on the podcast. This is a children's show. This is what I wanted to look at. It was also a card game, Xenophile collectible card game based on the comic.
Based on the comic. Okay.
So the comic came first, and they were like, we need to turn this into a card game for I don't know who. I also think this is funny because I would see Foglio and his wife, Kaya. They're on Twitter sometimes, they're on social media. they're very active on the convention scene. So they would often be posting when they were going to different conventions. And a lot of the time, more so than Magic, they were talking about Girl Genius, which is, I think, something that was developed by Kaya. And I thought it was a cartoon, but it's also mentioned here in the Wikipedia to Xenophile. In 2001, the Xenophile card game was reworked into a non-adult, non-collectible card game called Girl Genius: The Works, based on the Foglio's comic Girl Genius, which I got the impression was like a comic series marketed towards like young women, and it seemed to be very much about female empowerment. And I'm not sure how the Xenophile adult collectible card game was reworked into a non-adult, non-collectible card game.
Well, they probably just use like the mechanics of the game.
Okay, maybe that would make more sense because I don't know what else you would work into it. Girl Genius is an ongoing comic book series turned web comic, nominated for Hugo Awards. Follows the main character through an alternate history Victorian-style steampunk setting. Girl, maybe it's not for young adult women. Fantasy, humor, science fiction, steampunk, gas lamp fantasy. Okay. I just saw Girl Genius and I would see some of the art and I thought maybe it was like a young adult thing, kind of marketed more towards young women, young girls, people in the, I don't know, early teens, maybe, but maybe not. Anyways, that's enough talking about. I won't talk about Girl Genius because I don't know much about it. I just wanted to mention XXX Xenophile, Triple X Wine Lover, or Xenophile. Enophile, Alex. That's wine lover.
Oh, Onophile.
Onophile. Damn it.
I didn't know what you were asking me for a second. I was like, oh, wow.
Okay, how did we end up there? Flub's the Flub's the fool. 13 plus. That's how I got there. 13 plus.
Was
Children's
just trying to talk about my acquisitions.
I just had this flashback to this moment where I was browsing through the pages of a magazine for a children's card game, and then I saw XXX on this like full page ad. I was like, what is going on here? So okay. Anyways,
Well,
acquisitions, Alex. Bloomburrow play boosters.
I got those. I also found a Bloomburrow starter set that comes with 2 pre-constructed decks. They gave me cute deck boxes for those decks and a little rules guide. Excited.
Bloomburrow
just 2 little
precons.
decks to practice playing with new people and maybe some people I'm trying to attract into Magic and some decks to play at like a low power level, simple kind of style, like if you want to just bust them out anytime.
And these precons, these are not commander precons, right? Are these 60 card?
Right, no, they are
precons?
just 60 card precons, yeah.
60 card precons.
Head to head style. So I thought that'd be fun. It was only $20 and they're going crazy on TCG Player right now. They're like $34. So I scooped that up. I'm sure they'll come back down probably. Like I'd imagine those will be available. But who knows if there's a lot of demand for this set, like there seems to be. Maybe other people will scoop them up too.
And what are the featured cards on the front of those 2 precons? I remember seeing one of them. Somebody was posting about it on Twitter.
I lost it now, but it's the otter, the blue and red legendary otter from Bloomburrow.
Don't you have it right in front of you in the box?
No. Put it somewhere else. No.
Wait, didn't you just hold them up in front of the camera?
No, these oh yeah, it probably says it shows the picture, but it doesn't say what the card is.
Oh, you took the cards out of the box. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They didn't even come in the box. The boxes were flat. You have to turn them into a box yourself and fold down the edges.
That's crazy. That's pure insanity. Why would they do such a thing? Say that again. The cards didn't come in the box?
No, the cards The cards are
They
in
come in a
like
different box.
they're shrink wrapped in like a little brick stack.
Oh, okay. Shrink wrapped. The cards are shrink wrapped, Alex says. He got up. He's showing me the shrink wrapped stack of cards. Okay.
They just come like that, and then the two foil cards were loose. Bria Riptide Rogue and
Bria?
Bria Riptide Rogue.
Bria?
Yeah.
Riptide?
Yep.
Here we go. Bria Riptide Rogue. Okay, I think this is the one I saw somebody tweeting about. Yes. 2 colorless, 1 blue, 1 red, legendary creature, Otter Rogue, 3/3 with prowess, and other creatures you control have prowess. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Ophidian.
There you
I'm making my Ophidian unblockable
go.
with Bria Riptide Rogue. What was the other creature?
The other creature is Burke, Byrke, Birk, Burke, Long Ear of the Law, and he's a rabbit soldier.
Yerk, the rabbit soldier.
Yeah.
Long
It's came with a
ear.
Mockingbird, by the way, which I'm excited. I've noticed it's gone up a little bit in price. It was one of the cards that I was kind of excited about right when I saw.
That is very cool. Bjerk has a high casting cost, but it's in green. So there's probably lots of ramp in that deck. 4 colorless, 1 green, 1 white, 4/4 vigilance. When Bjerk, Long Ear of the Law, enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Whenever a creature you control with +1/+1 counter on it attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. Magic loves +1/+1 counters and precons for new players. They love counters and tokens. Counters and tokens. Okay. Okay, Alex.
And then I opened a Modern Horizons 3 pack just for fun. I had a store credit and I got a Ruby Medallion and a Bloodstained Mire, both basic original treatments, nothing special, but definitely worth opening a pack to get a Bloodstained Mire. I know my camera doesn't show that very well. Sorry.
Modern Horizons 3 reprints of 2 wonderful pre-modern era spells, Alex. The medallion, I haven't looked at the price in these
Wow,
since
look at
they've
that.
been
Still
reprinted.
expensive for the old
It
one.
is actually still more expensive than I thought it would be, because haven't they now been reprinted in 2 different recent sets?
Yeah.
Commander Masters and Modern Horizons 3, and it's still the original still holding strong above $20. You can pick up the reprints for 5, 7, 6, 23. What the hell is this one? Anywho, what's the Bloodstained Mire? I haven't looked to see if the fetch lands are coming down in price yet, but I don't expect them to have moved much yet.
Yeah, I feel like the
Bloodstained
old
Mire.
ones are still holding some value.
Onslaught Bloodstained
Unfortunately.
Mire. Current market price is $62.68.
Damn,
That
it's like
is
nothing.
trending down.
Yeah, just a bit.
Trending down. And how much is the Modern Horizons one going for? 14
Like 11
bucks?
bucks, I think.
18 bucks? 12.23, 12.53. You got this one, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
the one with the border.
The one with the border. Not bad, not bad pickups at all.
Yeah, worth it for a pack, you know.
As somebody that doesn't have playsets of the medallions and fetch lands, if I opened up a pack of Modern Horizons 3 and I got myself a fetch land and a medallion, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
I
Alex.
actually looked, I was
Those were
looking,
excellent
the reason
purchases.
I bought this was because I looked at the overall like value of cards for Modern Horizons 3, and it's not bad. I mean, it seems to me like, you know, not financial advice, not advising anyone to open packs for value at all, but you could do worse than Modern Horizons 3. There's a good handful of cards that are worth more than the cost of a play booster of it.
Trying to pull something up. My computer's going kind of slow. I'm just going to click on Modern Horizons 3 here in TCG Player, sort by market price.
I mean, there's a full
I can't
page
even
of
remember.
plus $10 cards.
Yeah, Ulamog. There's so a lot of the borderless stuff here, of course, at the top. People are
Yeah.
loving some of these borderless treatments. Emrakul, Ugin's Labyrinth, Ocelot Pride.
But also the regular versions of those same cards too. So,
Yeah,
regular Ocelot Pride for $45. I like that you can get a Phyrexian Tower in this set. That's pretty cool.
yeah.
And you have the fetch lands. Um, most of the other expensive stuff is modern. I would like be reselling it.
Psychic
But
Frog. I'm hearing lots about the Psychic Frog.
oh, okay.
It's doing work, I believe, on the tournament scene. 1 blue, 1 black, 1/2. Whenever Psychic Frog deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, draw a card. You can discard a card to put a +1/+1 counter on Psychic Frog. Exile 3 cards from your graveyard. Psychic Frog gains flying until end of turn. I mean, it's like a Psychotog, the Psychic Frog. It's a bit of a, you know what I'm saying, Alex?
Yeah.
Kind of like the Psychotog.
But yeah, that's what I did.
Okay. Excellent thing you did there, Alex. Trading in that GameStop, whatever the hell you trade in. What am I saying? Using those
I had a
GameStop
GameStop store credit for the Modern Horizons pack and the
store credit.
yeah. But I bought
How do
my
you get your
local
games?
LGS in order to support them.
How do you get your GameStop store credit? Do you trade in games?
No, there's like a yearly pro membership,
That thing.
and they give you like $5 every month plus cash back and some other dumb benefits and stuff. But it pays for itself if you make sure you go in and get your $5 worth of Magic cards every month.
What else do you pay GameStop this subscription? You're the only person left on the planet Earth subscribing to something from GameStop. You pay them this money. What do they do for you? They give you $5 for Magic, and then what else?
Every month. And then they give you some percent, like 2% cash back on what you buy there.
Okay.
And then
You're
I don't know,
single-handedly keeping GameStop afloat.
trying to the moon.
How many GameStop shares do you have in your Robinhood account right now?
I do not have a Robinhood account. I believe I have 7 shares of GameStop.
Oh, you actually do. Okay. Okay, then. Are you just waiting for Roaring Kitty to tweet again? Come on,
Yeah,
Kitty.
I'm
Where you been?
waiting. I'm just
Where's
waiting.
he been? He pretended like he was going to do something big. He opened his mouth and it was a whimper, not a roar. It was very disappointing. His second attempt at a pump. It wasn't even his second attempt, it was probably his seventh. But it had been a while. And then he pretended like he was going to do something other than GameStop. He was acting like maybe he was going to pump AMC or something. He started tweeting all these clips of like classic movies and that he was photoshopped into or something. I don't remember. And people were like, it's going to be AMC next. It's going to be. And then nothing happened.
Yeah.
I think he might be getting investigated.
That's why I think that's what everyone, laying low, not trying to, do anything that'll.
Yeah. Anywho, shout out to you, Roaring Kitty. I wish you the best. I hope you're doing well.
Best of luck. Other apes, or just apes. I shouldn't
We're just all
include
apes.
myself.
Shout out to all the apes.
All apes.
I think that's the end, Alex, of episode 98. I think it was a successful episode. We enjoyed talking about Weatherlight. I enjoyed that article from Mike Flores. Michael, thank you very much for convincing me to play Either Flash. Probably wasn't your intention when you wrote that article in 2007. You didn't think some guy would be reading it again in 2024 and being like, I think I'm going to put Either Flash in the sideboard of my Varchild's War Riders pre-modern deck because the way Mike described it as, a meddling mage set to his entire deck really resonated with me. And I really see the use case, when it's put that way. I always saw a use case, but I was like, I don't want to put in Either Flash just to kill my own survivor tokens. But yeah, sideboard card, it's great. Word it in against specific decks. Meddling mage, so their whole damn deck. So that was a successful segment, and I really enjoyed the segment, Alex. When we talked about our recent purchases, we haven't done that in a long time. We keep doing this because I showed you some cards, but you know what, people? If you were excited by me showing you bulk, oh boy, I got a lot more bulk to show you. I got 4 more episodes of bulk to show you, and I may even go back to that very same LGS next week and buy more bulk. Never know what I'm going to find. I don't have anything else to say. Alex, do you have anything you want to say to the listeners before we end episode 98 of the Old Mage MTG podcast?
I think we covered it.
We did cover it.
Thank
Oh,
you for
I have
tuning
one more
in.
thing. Well, sorry, what were you going to say?
After you? No.
I was just going to say, if you made it this far and you're not subscribed to the podcast yet, please do subscribe to us on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or whatever podcast app you listen to us on. What were you going to say, Alex?
Peace be with you.
Oh, and also with you.
I ain't gonna do this anymore. That's all from me. Goodbye.